Today we're talking with mopful-winrux, an electrical engineer who has spearheaded many of Urbit's coolest projects, such as Native Planet, Nock PU, and a new Vane called Lift. Welcome, mopful-winrux. First question for the podcast, which is, by the way, the first Red Horizon podcast. So congratulations on being our first guest. What got you into Urbit originally? What's your Urbit story?
I'm a Justin Murphy stan. I saw his interview with Yarvin around the same time that I found the white paper. I can never tell which one was first, but the combination of the two really drew me in. The Urbit white paper explained a lot. I think it's a great piece of Urbit lore. Some of it's not really accurate anymore, but it gives a pretty good description of the systems.
What was the episode of Justin Murphy?
His interview with Yarvin.
Really?
Yeah, 100%.
Were they talking about Urbit?
No, just I was like, who the hell is this guy, Curtis Yarvin?
And he happened to have this project.
I have no idea. I think around the time I was moving, I stumbled upon one of the two. I've always been interested in like decentralized systems, and previous careers, I've dealt with a lot of decentralization, multi-agent problems and stuff, and how that's solved in different fields, robotics. And they're never good solutions because they have fundamental problems with them, which I guess stumbled upon Urbit.
I feel like the white paper is actually one of the more esoteric pieces of the platform. A lot of Urbit's most committed members haven't even fully read the whole thing. It's 60 pages, right? Something like that.
Yeah, but it's a well-written white paper.
You got started there.
That's how you have to start any technology, right? You have to look at the explanation of it. Someone spent the time to sit down and write what they're planning to do, how a system works. That's going to be the best way, even if you have weird words. A lot of fields have weird words, right?
How did you come away from it? What did you feel like your understanding was coming away from the Urbit white paper?
Finally, a use case for NFTs that's executed. Like really, that was the big one, right? Identity is always a problem in distributed systems. Regardless of how you do it, something needs to be the authorization for it, but you need to build a platform that understands that, right? The .eth address didn't really make sense for computing. It made sense for a wallet. And that was the big thing. The other one was Nock. I still enjoy the thought exercise of such a reduced instruction set, because that matters a lot, right? This is Intel running into this problem now with x86 architecture. It's gotten so complex that they can't really squeeze out much more performance from the core instruction set. So the chips are just getting bigger and more specialized. The problem with that is you're wasting energy. Now you have ARM that's coming in with a reduced instruction set that is taking over the world.
I would love to dig deeper into that, but before we start, maybe we should offer a fig leaf to some of our less informed listeners about what Nock is exactly and how it relates to the system that we call Urbit.
Nock is Urbit's assembly language, is a good way of putting it. It is 12 opcodes. You really only need 5. The rest are useful sugar that Lagoon, which is our higher level language, compiles down to. It is a functional language, and it operates on nouns, which nouns are either a natural number or a cell of 2 nouns. This gives Urbit a unique binary tree structure for its memory model. There's a lot of implications in that.
It insists you must make your entire system using this thing, and it's very small. And there's a certain aesthetic beauty in making everything based on a definition very small.
Small definitions are, what is it? Gödel's proving theorem says you can never prove your axioms. So if you have a small amount of axioms, you can prove a lot. Small things are pretty, right? The small things can lead to a lot of complexity too, which is, I think, the beauty in it.
Yeah, and as we're speaking now, there's a lot of attention being paid, I think, in our ecosystem to the possibility of other Nocks, meaning like the possibility of other small definitions of a computer that could be used to create a system. There was this old one called Axe that I was reading about, but people have had some ideas about like computing from first principles. Urbit probably by far the most mature, maybe by a couple of decades. But what are your thoughts on the other ones?
I think it's the most mature, and I think it's important to note that the idea of a Lisp computer has been around for decades also, right? And or a functional computer, however you want to think about it. It's useful to look at Urbit's guide and the implementation details, right? That you have something you can build a product on. You have something you can sell. A computer is useless if you can't sell it, or at least sell an experience with it.
The Lisp machine used to be this incredibly popular business product, and there was a lot of bullishness in the tech ecosystem before the 80s that these Lisp machines were actually going to run the AI revolution, that these expert systems built with Lisp machines were going to be intelligent computers one day. And up until a point, that was the path to what we currently know as machine learning, LLMs, AI, and all that.
What's funny is they're all running on GPUs now. And Lisp never took off. Right? This functional recursive programming, it's the complete opposite. It was straight line, go fast. That's what happens when you have 30 years of optimization.
It turns out machine intelligence is just like running as many cycles as you can.
Yes. But going back to this, the speciation of Nock, I think Sitful Hatred coined that term in one of our Native Planet chats, and I've taken it because that's what it is. I think of it as a very positive thing. You have Eden also, which is a technical speciation of Nock, much closer to the Nock definition, but they don't have dynamic hints and nouns aren't natural numbers, but finite fields. Kind of cool. It makes implementing a Nock PU or an Eden PU a lot easier if you don't have arbitrary precision atoms. But I'm interested in Plunder. I think Plunder is more Haskell-y than Urbit, which as a non-Haskeller, I don't like, but I get the appeal of it. And I'm interested to see how not just like truly limited ISAs are, but limited functional ISAs. I don't know the right terms for the stuff.
I'm still doing my due diligence on Plunder, but from what I understand, they're an incredibly different project because they have no intentions to dominate the world. They simply want to make a beautiful computer.
There's an aesthetic beauty to that. It's a good thing. I like that.
Yeah, when I first heard about you, when I first came into the Urbit ecosystem in like late 2021, there was a lot of braggadociousness about the fact that Urbit is really taking off. We have a guy working on a CPU actually that's going to run Nock. And I remember I joined your Urbit group at the time and you were like, hey guys, I got my second opcode finished. We're a sixth of the way there. Where's the project today?
It took a pause. It took about a yearish pause so we can start up Native Planet. That took most of my CPU cycles. No, that took most of my cycles and time, along with like new kid and everything. So that took a pause. Right now, a couple months ago, I switched it to use completely open source software. So anyone can go download it, run the simulation and such using iVerilog, which again, open source and free, and then GTK Wave to view the signals. But we are currently getting funded to research the Nock PU. We have about a year of my time, like part-time funded, to continue work and try and build out a prototype to see how it would work. So I'm excited about that. You'll probably hear more about it during assembly, and I'll keep posting updates in my group.
Is the idea that these things are going to be produced and sold?
No, absolutely not. It's a pure research project. The work product of the grant is the open source code, which is Verilog, which is a specialized language for hardware programming, and technical documentations along with 2 prototypes, one for Native Planet and one for our patron.
Let's talk a little bit about the Native Planet project. So you stopped working on Nock PU. You started working on something that was a little more practical in
Yes.
the common day, which is to sell computers intended to run Urbit and give people a zero maintenance personal server that they can hold in their hand for the first time.
Yes.
At least as a complete product. Somebody could have tinkered one on their own before, and many people did.
Yeah, that's how it started.
Zero
Yes.
personal server product.
Yes, this is how it started. Sitful Hatred and I, which the Native Planet team is myself, Dalhek Bandler, Sitful Hatred, and now it's Dosriel. So Sitful Hatred and I built Urbit for Umbrel. This was our first forte into how do you make Urbit hosting as easy as possible. It was a Docker image with a Web1 web page that did this, and you can turn your Umbrel Bitcoin server into a communication server on top of it. That was highly successful, but it ran into issues, right? There's some major networking issues with hosting Urbit at home that we had to fix. Dalek Bandler was looking to build the hardware side. I have a background in hardware. We all got together and basically designed what you've seen on Twitter and such and in our groups. These products, not only are they aesthetically, they look pretty, right? We designed them to be the center of your house. This is where you talk to your family. But the guts on the inside, the software design is very, I think it's technically elegant. The networking solution definitely is our elegant solution. You can either pay us or host it yourself, but you can expose your Urbit with AIMS and HTTP with basically 0 click, or 1 click. You have to enter a registration code. It handles the whole networking issues that we solved. Our first product, the Tellurian, you can still buy them. Pretty good. I run my planet on it. It was down this morning, though. I lost internet for a couple hours, but that's the nice thing about Urbit. You don't have to be connected.
As you lost your internet connection, your Urbit had a bunch of things to say to all of your friends, and it just decided to keep its mouth shut for a while. And then the moment it realizes it's connected again, it's going to start talking for hours, letting everybody know what they missed out on.
Yeah, or even letting me know what I missed out on, right? That's the really nice part about it is I didn't have internet for maybe 5 hours in my server at home when I got it back. But these are things built into Urbit that we take for granted because we use it all the time. But the exactly once delivery, the determinism, all this stuff, it seamlessly updated all my groups and all my messages. I even got a couple app updates in that time because I got to demo some exciting things at assembly. But again, you can't do that on a Linux server, right? You can't do that on a typical stack. The labor in that's so hard to physically own your device. This is why SaaS companies host things for everyone, because you have to pay a systems engineer X amount to do it.
Also because ISPs seem to really not want people running their own servers. Quite technically challenging sometimes to run something with an open port in your own damn house.
Yes, because people don't own their routers, right? A lot of people rent their routers from et cetera. You don't own an IP address. That's the catch. Why you need an identity system with networking built in. Look what happened with IP. You have to come up with IPv6 that never existed.
The lift from you own absolutely nothing to you own everything, it takes some time. You have to take it step by step. There's a bootstrapping process.
Yes, exactly. I feel like as someone who develops on Urbit, I take that bootstrapping happened for granted. Thinking about it, it makes a lot of native planet hardware, and especially like self-hosting and owning your data and sovereignty feasible, which I guess that's what it was designed for, right?
You guys have this product, I guess, engineered around this problem of people really shouldn't have to work with their home routers in order to get their personal server working. It's a terrible user experience. I don't know if any in the audience have tried to log into their routers and change the administrative settings, but it's a wasp's nest and everyone is different. And there's no tutorial that'll work for every router. So good luck. You guys have this thing called Startram that makes it so you don't have to. What's the deal with that? Tell us about that.
Yeah, Startram, it's a multi-tenant version of a protocol that Sitful implemented called Anchor. Well, what this does is it opens up a VPN connection between your native planet and specifically your Urbit, your Mini IO, and I think that's it. We're going to be expanding it to do other things in the future, but it opens that and gives you a subdomain for all those things through a WireGuard VPN tunnel. What's nice about it is your home IP is protected. Even through Urbit, you have some sort of VPN protection on it, but you can access your landscape outside, or your realm, whatever front end you want outside of your home network with a subdomain. It'll be your patp.startram.io, and makes it super trivial, basically like a hosting onboarding, where you just you upload a key file and everything gets booted and set up. At least that's our goal, to make it as easy as that. It's a little bit more difficult because your internet can go down, but it's the cost, right?
And there are some I hear who wish to run their Urbit Galaxies on native planet devices now.
There is, yeah. We have a specialized version called Galaxy Tram. It requires a little bit more networking to do, but I think Reb is run on it. It's pretty cool. It's a little bit more expensive because we need a more reliable VPN for Galaxies because they have a bunch more traffic, etc. But I'm happy with it. Yeah, that was a couple months ago we got that out. Yeah.
I'm curious philosophically what personal computing means to you personally. Are there interesting things that you use a computer for that average people do not?
Yeah, I think so. I use a computer for most of my life. If we think about it, we all do. Personal computing to me means owning the hardware that is running your digital life, right? It might be a little different than most, but if you can't control the cycles on your chip, then you don't own your data, right? That's where it needs to live. How do I explain this?
Personal is in ownership of property, is in physical property.
Well, yes, but there's more than that, right? So like we use computers for everything, right? Everything has a microprocessor in it. Your washing machine has one. Even your regular old fridge, even if you don't have a smart fridge, you have some microprocessor in there. And that's compute that you own. And it does something for you. It like keeps your food cold. It turns on the light when you've opened the door. It beeps at you when it's open for too long. All this stuff, this is a compute you own. But when you hook it up to the internet, someone else can now control what gets computed on that, and you don't own it. So it's not just owning the device, but owning the entire thing that controls it from the ground up. And being able to control that. That's what personal computing means to me.
Yeah, I've never owned a smart fridge, but I can't imagine the feeling of using one. It feels so personal.
No, absolutely not. Because you're sending a camera feed to whoever made the fridge back all the time, right? That's what you're paying for that.
Most of the things I own do not phone home. Somehow the ones that connect to the internet all do.
Interesting how that works. Yeah.
So most of the time recently when I talk to you, because I see you often in the Urbit Hacker House on GatherTown, you talk about this new Vane that you're developing for the Urbit kernel called Lick, formerly called Lock. I've heard a fair amount about it, but for the audience who may not have, what's the purpose of this Vane? Why does Urbit need a new Vane? Maybe one sentence or two about what a Vane is to begin with and what your inspiration was.
A Vane is a kernel module. Essentially, a Vane is something that produces an effect and then returns that data back to your Arvo kernel. I wrote a Vane that allows user space apps to open what's called a Unix socket or an inter-process communication socket on Earth, basically talk to any apps or any Earth software that's running on the same hardware as it. So the IPCs are used everywhere in Unix programming. I think Windows has a version of it, but they essentially allow two processes to talk to each other by sending essentially UDP sockets, for a lack of a better term. You send a packet, you send some bit of data, you get notified in your computer, you do something with it. It allows user space apps to Gall agent to talk to Earth. We've prototyped a few things with it. The obvious use case is IoT, right? I want to talk to some hardware. I want to take data. I need to somehow open it. That was the original intention for it anyways, with Lock. But you need to get some data and pass it through. We've come up with some other ones. I have one where I basically ported PalFun's terminal UI snake game to using Lick and doing all the rendering on Earth using just like Pygame or whatever simple renderer. All the backend logic gets done on Mars. Your state gets saved on Mars. You have that determinism, but you don't really care about display determinism. So you can pass that out as an effect. The big one is YubiKey, right? You can only access your Urbit if you have a certain key plugged in. We can keep going on this.
I'm interested in the use case where I can have my Urbit control all of the electronic locks in my house. And then I can go through an interface and say which Urbit IDs are allowed in my house. And then they can like scan their phone and say that they are this Urbit ID, and it'll check their public key and open the door for them if and only if they're on my access list. Can I do this with Lick?
Yes, you can. This is the Vane that enables that. Like, you have to build a bit of infrastructure on there.
You guys have to build a device that connects to locks.
Yeah, exactly. What's nice about that is what you just described is essentially a completely distributed Airbnb. right? That's the primitive that an Airbnb needs to be built off of.
That's true. I can put my house up for rent in a smart contract, and then upon that smart contract being fulfilled, have them added to the access list. And then I don't even have to confirm them into anything else. They already have access to my house.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Still want to do some kind of manual review. I wouldn't have to.
You tie this in with other projects like Era and all this, where you have a reputation and a knowledge graph and et cetera, you see where you can build pretty interesting, big distributed systems. But it takes time, right?
But this use case kind of makes me think that a better name for the Vane would have been Lock. Can you explain why you decided to call it Lick instead?
Lock was the original name that Neil and I came up with.
With Nocks app?
Yeah, that's it. But I presented Lock. So this was before the WIP program. It was essentially a WIP, but it wasn't officially called that. I presented it to the core development team, and they found some issues with the original design of it, mostly around security and portability, which is fair. We use a different communication protocol than what's currently used, which was a little bit unsafe. So anyways, so we changed it. The L0, LO lock kind of made sense, but then it was completely different. So I think it needed a new name. So this one was Lick, LI, L1. And it was after Licklider, which is a famous computer scientist who did a lot of stuff with ARPA. And the original.
So to be clear, it's spelled L-I-C-H.
L-I-C-K.
L-I-C-K.
Lick. Yes. Yeah. The protocol is that you spin, shut, spit, and soak. So things that your tongue does.
So programmers writing these modules to print things or to control doors in houses, they will have to visualize these metaphors of using the tongue to perform an action in order to in order to get this functionality.
Yes.
I'm interested to hear from you because you're one of the strongest advocates for the Urbit philosophy of software in general and the need for a new platform of computation. What parts of the Earth stack, the stack that doesn't include Urbit, do you think are correct? What did Earth get right?
I think anything that's not networked, I think is okay. Even that's difficult, right? Because, yeah, I don't know. That's a hard question. Let me think about that a second, and we can edit this.
Or we can not edit it and
just be awkward.
Understand exactly the amount of effort and concentration was spent into delivering your thoughtful response.
It is, and it's not that thoughtful a response. I've avoided most networking things in my career because it's generally a pain. So that's where like my jihad starts. Even if you dig down to how caching works and low-level stuff like that, like I did with the Nock PU, complexity where there shouldn't be any, or complexity at the wrong layer. There has to be complexity, but complexity at the wrong layer, and you see how that builds up. I think the von Neumann architecture is correct. I don't see an issue with that. And then things based on von Neumann architectures, you have something that you have memory and compute separated, and the compute works on the memory. This is good because it makes computers go fast. But you have to build like caching and all this to make that happen. So I don't know. With computing stack, I'm a Linux head. I don't hate Linux. I hate networking. Like I can use Linux for everything as a file is a decent enough abstraction. For
networking, you have to like imagine things in motion. It's not the same as
it's very different. Yes, exactly. And the thing is, I don't know, unless I know exactly how you're going to move, I can't necessarily act correctly. And this falls back into not having determinism, or not having a deterministic system, or even a partially deterministic system isn't very useful in this. One of the problems we're dealing with is floating point. This is for Lagoon, which is the numerical library Neil, myself, and Niblet are working on. And you basically want to jet these computations to be run on Earth, right? So you don't have to do floating point addition in Hoon. The problem is the hardware is not deterministic. It is, but it's not really. Different compilers give you different results. Different settings of the chip give you different results. Floating point is hard. Urbit fixes this by doing fixed point, but if we have hardware jets with like into a GPU, each GPU could produce a different result. And you're not deterministic anymore. How do you deal with that? And you see this even in hardware, it becomes an issue. So even that part of the stack, I'm like, yeah, this needs to be thrown out. Something I took for granted because I did a lot of computational analysis. Oh, 1 bit might be wrong. I can just round it and it'll be fine. Doesn't necessarily work in a networked way.
And this project, I believe, is aiming to eventually end in the existence, possibly one day, of neural networks and LLMs on Earth.
We already have one. We have 2 LLMs. There's 2 neural networks currently on.
I believe these are measured by number of weights.
Yes, I think that's fair. That's one way of measuring them.
So how many weights are we talking now?
The first one was written by Neil and myself. It was an exclusive neural network that we did not train on Mars, but we did inference on it. So this is a 4-weight neural network. And it solves for exclusive OR, which is like the simplest multi-layer perceptron you can build. A litlib niblet has written one that does MNIST. So this is the handwriting analysis data set. And I believe that's 210,000 different weights.
210,000 weights.
I think so. I have to double check that. But yeah, that's not that much.
What can it do?
It can detect a handwriting analysis.
Wow.
On a picture. Yeah, so if you feed it an image from the set, it'll look at the black and white pixel image and tell you which numeric character it is. So if it's a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 9.
Wow.
It takes about 3 minutes to run, which is dog slow.
So we're recording this episode on Tuesday, August 8th. When, because this is recent work, right? When were these neural networks trained?
They weren't trained on Urbit, right? This is inference we're doing on Urbit. So there's a difference. We got the exclusive OR maybe 2 weeks ago. And last week was what Litlib, I think Litlib showed us what she did, which is cool. Yeah.
So we're seeing exponential growth in number of weights used. Should we begin to track this metric? And
2 points means exponential. We have 3 points, right? 0, 4, and no.
I don't think you can continue on that trend line more than a logarithmic scale.
Yeah, absolutely. We need a lot more time. We need to figure out how to jet the matrix calculations that we're doing. That's, I think, our next step, because we can't use typical linear algebra libraries because we can't use floating point hardware. So we'll have to write our own subroutines.
To put it in perspective, when I use ChatGPT to do my programming for me, how many weights are we talking about you using there?
I don't know. ChatGPT did not release the number of weights for GPT-4, but you're talking in the
hundreds of billions.
Yeah, so 9 orders of magnitude? No, 7 orders of magnitude more.
Okay, so we have to keep on 10xing this
every week
for a couple months.
Perfect. And yeah, we'll be there.
We'll be ChatGPT powerful.
It'd be so slow though. So there's the constraints on Urbit right now, other than the Loom, right? Because you can get a LoRa. It'll be tight to get a LoRa 7B model, like Llama 7B on Urbit. But let's say we have 16 gigabyte Loom, then you can get that. The issue is going to be the speed of the calculation. So you can imagine a really funny story where AGI gets born on Urbit, but it's too slow to do anything. That's how humanity has to compete.
There's already the thesis that like we make an intelligence so powerful that it decides to do nothing.
I like that theory.
I find this AI on Urbit thing very fascinating. Number one, because I always thought it was just not going to happen for decades, just because of the fact that normally what we use Urbit for is text. I've intuitively felt you have to graduate to images before, like many steps before you get to LLMs.
We're pretty far away from LLMs, but images is just linear algebra, right? It's all. So first step is building a linear algebra library. Second step is I don't know, third step's profit.
Yeah, the second, maybe there's more than another step in between.
Yeah.
But this whole thing is incredibly important because I feel like people and their relation to AI is very tense. There's like this disharmonious relationship with the computer where we don't really trust this thing. It's totally
You don't own
centralized.
it. Yeah, you don't own it. That's why.
Who knows what it's doing with the information you feed in? Who knows the veracity of the things it spits out? You don't really have much control over what it knows.
Who knows who knows how it's being edited?
I think what people actually really are craving, the thing that people want and they don't know they want, is a computer that's really smart. We just want it to be ours. That's the solution to the alignment problem. Is you have to own the robot.
Yes,
truly.
Exactly.
Yes. Like all the interesting problems in the alignment space is how do you actually own something that might be able to trick you into never being able to turn it off?
You just unplug it. At least that's my hesitancy towards it. I don't know if the average person thinks in these terms, but something's being run that's using your data and producing garbage for you. You don't know what's being produced, right? You don't know what type of AI is producing it, right? If it can be trained on complete evilness and it's still an AI, it's just an evil AI. They can sell it to you as a good one. You don't own the compute. You don't know what's being run.
Yeah. You need to train the AI with data produced only by people with good hearts.
Yes, exactly. Which is Urbit.
Just data trained by you and your friends. And we make the judgment.
Yes, precisely.
I don't like you. I'm not feeding your information into my intelligent machine.
Yes, exactly. Or I'm feeding it with a negative weight. So if it repeats something like this to me, it gets punished.
Do you think that ChatGPT has gotten worse?
Oh, recently? It obviously has.
What's been the sign of that for you?
When I played around with 7B models for various research tasks. And one thing I was playing with was the quality of the work when it gets quantized. So what quantization means is, so typically a weight is double floating point precision. So you have 64 bits to represent the weight. You can quantize these models. The big one is using LoRa. You can quantize it into single precision, so 32, half, quarter, or even int 8. So basically, you lose a lot of information in these weights, and the quality gets worse. This is a known trade-off that maybe you don't need a perfect, maybe you can make some sacrifices in precision for faster compute and all this. And they're all fair trade-offs that you have to play, but degradation in results. And the mimic I saw between the two is what I saw with ChatGPT when it first came out and now. It's not that it's dumber. It's that I think they quantize the weights to save on compute, is my suspicion. Yeah.
My experience was I got ChatGPT 4 to play a game of Dungeons and Dragons with me. And it put me in a scenario where I was in this haunted house. At least it seemed haunted. There were unidentified beings swarming around the house, and I wasn't sure what to do about them. And I was really only after the treasure inside the house, so I elected to set fire to the house. And ChatGPT just wouldn't let me. It said that it wasn't allowed, which is classically against the rules of dungeon mastering a D&D game. You can't tell somebody they're not allowed to do that. Maybe if it really crosses if it makes everybody uncomfortable, okay, but you could burn a house down.
No, so that's different than what I've seen. I think that's just censorship, right? I think that's just saying, no, we don't want our AI model to talk about this stuff, so we're going to put blockades on it. Or we have another model that treats sentiment, and if it's violence, we don't do that.
Sometimes the AI is embedable if you can test it a little bit. Well, come on, man, it's not that bad. Give me the result. Sometimes it'll do that. But in this case, it would not let me proceed in the game. I had to act like the only alignment allowed was lawful good in this D&D game. It was really like the immersion was totally broken.
Interesting. That's the big thing with GPT-4, right? When they released the paper on it, none of it had anything about the architecture. All it talked about was safety and security. It's an interesting development. I haven't played with Llama 2 yet, so I'm interested to see how that done. If we can get a decent 16, or 13B model working, you fine tune it to some of your data, I think you can do some interesting stuff at home with a model that size.
Do you think a
Fun.
D&D game is possible?
I think you would have to train a neural network. You would have to fine tune a neural network specifically on D&D games. But it should be. That's the catch with the 16, with the smaller ones, right? Is your fine tuning to be specialized is much more the path you want to go down for that.
What are your favorite apps on Urbit? What do you normally do when you're actually using the software?
Talk, hands down, talk, love it. Talk
Shout
to
out to
groups.
Blonde.
Yeah, like the improvements of the past 6 months have been fantastic. Surface 2 is great if you haven't played with that. I'm a Rumors fan. Rumors is the best global feed for Urbit. Still convinced of that. There's 2 others have it, Trill and Portal.
Trill and Portal.
Scratch. Have you played with that one yet? Scratch is like Pastebin on Urbit. So it's great. I can host my own Pastebin. I'm looking through what I have. I've played with Realm a good bit. Realm is interesting. They got their video call chat to work pretty well. We could use it for Native Planet meetings. Or we're trying to. I think they just added screen sharing. I think that's like the last big stopper for us. We need to wait to share screens. So that's a good one. You have to use their own app for it, but it works pretty good.
I downloaded Realm way too early, and my Realm state is completely broken and won't do anything.
Reach out to Lumber. He'll help you out. I got an early prototype in it, clogged my aims. And I have about 10K open aims connections that aren't being closed that I need to consolidate. It's slowing down my peer. Yeah, it's funny. Yay for prototyping stuff. I'm thinking, what other apps do I use?
We're going to take so much pride in our never breached Urbit IDs in the never breached.
Oh, I'm jealous.
I've never breached, and I'm going to have the slowest Urbit machine out of anybody in the world one day, and I'm going to take great pride in it. It's going to go on my tombstone that I had the slowest computer because I was the most stubborn out of all of the early adopters.
Oh man. Have you played with radio yet?
When radio came out, it was really popular, and I was in there all the time because there were always people there. Now I almost never catch people in there, but I do try occasionally.
Yeah, I check it out when I can. With the Fish Tank, they were streaming Fish Tank on it, and that was fantastic.
Once one of these apps, like radio in particular, if it catches critical mass and there's like at least one room that's always got somebody in there and you can reliably go there to chat with somebody live and watch a video, that's going to be great. I guess that's why we're trying to grow the network, right? Is we don't want to consolidate and start a fire that can keep burning for a while.
Yes. Have you played with Heed?
No, I haven't heard of it.
Heed is Sagram's app. It basically takes all your groups' gallery and notebook, and you can turn it into an Instagram-like feed, which is nice.
That is great.
Consolidates all the notebooks and gallery posts. Big fan of it. It's a nice global feed for your groups. Yeah, those are my big ones. Send is my app. It's like an old game. You can get it. Dister, Dazod, mopfel-winrux. But it's just a JavaScript game that I spend way too much time on.
Does it store anything on Urbit?
No, not yet. I got to find time to do it. It shouldn't be hard to, though.
That's the old Flash game with the sand falling from the top.
Yeah.
It's like
it uses Urbit to serve up a JavaScript front end for you. It's great.
Yeah. Well, it's a great use case of Urbit, actually, because that game did disappear from the net. And yeah, you need to have access to those things.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember getting addicted to that game for a while, and it's like stupefying. How does a game like that end up addictive? But yet you can spend hours just pouring sand.
I enjoy it. Like it's you have a meeting that you don't really want to pay attention to. You can just fiddle with it.
Watch the sand fall.
Exactly. Blow things up.
How can people learn more about Native Planet?
You can join our group, RALDEG, RALDEG. Native Planet. You can DM me, anyone on the Native Planet group. I'm on Twitter. I don't check my messages often, so better ping me on the network. But yeah, ask around. I'm usually on. We have phone notifications now. It's great. I'm pretty good at answering DMs because of it.
What are the boxes?
We have 2 right now. We have the Tellurian, which is our starter model. This can, well, It used to be it could host around 4 ships, but I think we're higher than that now. I think we're close to 10-ish. And then we have the Aurora, which is a higher end model, which can host, I think the upper limit on it's close to 60. We haven't tested it, but theoretically it's 60. Yeah. Even if you don't want to buy our boxes, GroundSeg is our software. You can load it on any old laptop or computer you have and get up and running on the network in probably an hour max.
Preferably using Startram to get around your router issues and use Urbit from your phone when you're out and about.
If you just want to try Urbit, just download GroundSeg on an old Linux laptop and try it out. We have an OS you can download that runs it. You don't need to pay for Startram to try it. Get on the network and play with it. You need
to clarify, if somebody would like to, then Startram.
Oh yeah, use Startram. It makes it easy. It makes it trivial. There's a lot of cool built-in, because we can control the endpoint. We can add a lot of checks in it to maintain a network state, which makes dealing with the networking a lot easier. That's the hard part, is the earth-side networking. It's a pain. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Thank you for being the first guest on our podcast. This was a great talk.
Oh man, I feel lucky. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your insights.
Yep. See ya.
Talk to you later.